Jasmine Williams moved through her sunlit penthouse as if it were a stage set for perfection. The sleek marble floors reflected the afternoon light, highlighting the elegance she carried effortlessly. A successful marketing executive, she had worked tirelessly to build a life that most would envy, an enviable career, a stunning home overlooking the ocean, and a marriage that, to the outside world, seemed flawless. Marcus, her husband, was everything she had ever dreamed of in the early days of their romance: charming, ambitious, and seemingly devoted. Together, they were the picture of sophistication, attending gala events and hosting soirees where everyone whispered about how perfect they appeared. Yet, beneath the polished veneer, subtle cracks were forming. Marcus had started staying late at the office, offering vague excuses about meetings and client emergencies. His phone buzzed incessantly, always screened before she could see it, and there were times he'd disappear for hours without explanation. Jasmine brushed off the gnawing unease, attributing it to stress or fatigue, though a small, persistent voice inside warned her otherwise. Meanwhile, in the shadows of Jasmine's seemingly perfect world, Vanessa watched. Marcus' lover, a woman driven by envy and manipulation, had long coveted what Jasmine had. She studied Jasmine's every move, measuring her own life against the effortless grace and prosperity that surrounded the unsuspecting wife. Every elegant gown, every confident smile, and every gesture of affection from Marcus fed Vanessa's simmering jealousy. Jasmine remained blissfully unaware that her life was teetering on the edge of betrayal. The luxury, the laughter, the admiration of friends, all of it could unravel in a heartbeat. Vanessa's envy was growing, her desire to disrupt Jasmine's happiness intensifying. And Marcus, the man Jasmine trusted with her heart, was already entangled in a secret that could destroy everything she held dear. The sun was beginning its slow descent, painting the sky in shades of gold and coral as Jasmine welcomed her guests to the summer party she had meticulously planned. The seaside villa was alive with laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the soft hum of a string quartet playing in the background. Friends, family, and prominent business acquaintances mingled effortlessly, all captivated by the elegance of Jasmine's hosting. Her dress, a flowing emerald gown that shimmered in the twilight, seemed to perfectly complement the serene ocean backdrop, and Jasmine's smile radiated warmth and confidence. Yet beneath the veneer of celebration, a subtle tension prickled at her senses. Marcus, her husband, lingered too long near Vanessa, the woman who had wormed her way into their lives. He laughed at her jokes a little too loudly, touched her shoulder with familiarity, and whispered words that Jasmine couldn't hear but instinctively knew were intimate. A cold spike of unease ran through her. Vanessa's eyes met hers across the crowd, sharp, calculating, and tinged with malice. Irritation and embarrassment boiled within Jasmine, and when Vanessa approached her under the guise of friendly conversation, the tension erupted. Words were exchanged, sharp, controlled, yet laced with venom, though careful smiles hid the true intensity from the other partygoers. Guests passing by caught fleeting glances, sensing the undercurrent of conflict but unable to decipher the brewing storm. Jasmine excused herself, the noise of the party fading behind her as she walked along the beach. The rhythmic crash of the waves offered a brief respite, the cool sand grounding her racing thoughts. She tried to steady her heart, to shake off the uneasy feeling that something darker lurked just beneath the surface. Unbeknownst to her, Vanessa's envy had evolved into a dangerous determination, one that would soon turn this seemingly perfect evening into a night of terror. The moon hung low over the water, casting a silvery glow that danced on the gentle waves. Jasmine inhaled the salty breeze, hoping the calm rhythm of the sea would soothe her racing heart. She hadn't noticed Vanessa following her until a shadow loomed beside her, cold and deliberate. "Leaving so soon, Jasmine?" Vanessa's voice was smooth but carried an unmistakable edge. Jasmine turned, tension coiling in her chest. "Just needed some fresh air," she replied cautiously, trying to maintain composure. Vanessa stepped closer, her eyes glinting with malice. "You always think everything is yours, don't you? The perfect husband, the perfect life, but what if I showed you just how fragile it really is?" Before Jasmine could respond, Marcus appeared at the edge of the beach, casually leaning against a palm tree. He didn't intervene. Instead, a subtle smirk played on his lips, encouragement shining in his eyes. The realization hit Jasmine like a physical blow. Her husband was not only absent in protection but silently approving Vanessa's aggression. Shock froze her for a split second, disbelief and pain washing over her like a tidal wave. Vanessa's temper snapped. With a swift, violent motion, She shoved Jasmine toward the water. Jasmine stumbled, her heels sinking into wet sand, and before she could regain balance, she tumbled into the cold, churning sea. Panic seized her chest as the waves pulled her under, the salt stinging her eyes, her lungs screaming for air. She thrashed instinctively, flailing against the merciless current, her elegant gown now a heavy, waterlogged trap dragging her down. Fear and betrayal collided inside her. Marcus' betrayal was far worse than the cold water. It was the shattering knowledge that the man she loved had sided with a woman trying to destroy her. Every wave threatened to swallow her, every gasp of air felt like a desperate gamble. Her mind screamed for safety, but the sea showed no mercy. The moonlight shimmered off the water's surface, reflecting the terror and disbelief etched across Jasmine's face, her trust in love shattered, leaving only raw, aching vulnerability. Alexander Knight was not a man easily startled. A billionaire entrepreneur renowned for his sharp mind and quiet philanthropy, he had come to the coastal town for a business retreat, seeking both respite and inspiration. As he walked along the beach, appreciating the serene evening, his eyes caught an unusual sight, a dark figure struggling violently in the surf, arms flailing against the relentless waves. Without hesitation, Alexander sprinted toward the water, his designer shoes abandoned in the sand. The waves crashed over him as adrenaline surged through his veins. He assessed the situation quickly, a woman, caught in the current, gasping for air and being dragged further from shore. Calm yet resolute, he dove into the churning sea, cutting through the waves with powerful strokes, his presence commanding and assured even amid chaos. The struggle intensified as Alexander reached her, wrapping strong arms around Jasmine just as another wave threatened to pull her under. Her body was limp, her head barely breaking the water's surface. He maneuvered her through the relentless current, his focus unwavering, every motion calculated to counter the force of the sea. Finally, they reached shallower water, Alexander carrying her to the safety of the sand. Jasmine's body sagged against him, unconscious and shivering, while salt water clung to her hair and clothing. Alexander laid her gently on the warm sand, his hand steady as he checked her breathing and assessed her condition. Despite the chaos of the moment, his calm confidence radiated reassurance, a stark contrast to the fear and despair that had consumed her just moments before. For the first time since being betrayed and thrown into the sea, Jasmine felt a fragile thread of hope. The man who had saved her exuded a quiet strength that hinted at safety, protection, and perhaps a future she hadn't dared to imagine in the darkness of betrayal. Jasmine's eyes fluttered open, greeted by the soft glow of moonlight reflecting off the restless waves. Her body ached, muscles trembling from the ordeal, but the first, most overwhelming sensation was relief. She was alive. For a moment, confusion clouded her mind, the edges of reality blurred with fear and disbelief. The salt water stung her eyes, and sand clung to her damp gown, but it was the presence of someone else that caught her attention. Alexander sat nearby, his gaze steady and watchful. He had not left her side, his quiet vigilance a reassuring anchor amid her lingering panic. "You're safe now," he said softly, his voice calm and deliberate. There was no judgment, no intrusion, only genuine concern. Jasmine felt a fragile thread of trust form, tentative but undeniable. As she pushed herself to a sitting position, memories of the night came rushing back, the sharp shove, the cold water swallowing her, Marcus' betrayal, and a flash of movement on the distant beach made her stomach tighten. Vanessa, unmistakably, stood at the edge of the party grounds, a smug, satisfied smile curling her lips. It was a deliberate display, a final reminder of the darkness that had entered Jasmine's life. The reality settled heavily on her shoulders. Her life, the one she had believed secure and perfect, had irrevocably changed. Nothing would ever be the same again. Yet, amid the fear and heartbreak, a faint glimmer of resilience stirred within her. For the first time since the betrayal, Jasmine realized that survival was not just about being alive, it was about reclaiming control over life that had been shattered. As Jasmine sat on the sand, wrapped in the warmth of the blanket Alexander had draped over her shoulders, fragments of her life began to surface with painful clarity. She remembered the subtle ways Marcus had controlled her finances, insisting on overseeing her accounts while feigning concern for their joint future. She recalled the countless evenings he claimed were late work meetings but had been spent with Vanessa instead. The moments of emotional neglect, the dismissive tone when she expressed fears, and the hollow reassurances now painted a pattern she could no longer ignore. Each memory gnawed at her, connecting dots that had once seemed unrelated. The late-night calls, the mysterious expenses, the distant smiles he reserved for her, all now told a story of deliberate betrayal. Her mind reeled with disbelief and sorrow, but beneath it stirred a fierce determination. She would not remain a pawn in someone else's game. Alexander's calm presence was a stark contrast to the storm of emotions swirling inside her. He had been gentle yet firm, keeping her safe, assessing the surrounding area for any lingering threats, and offering practical advice to regain her composure. "You're not alone," he said, his voice steady. "We'll make sure you're safe, Jasmine. No one will harm you again tonight." As she absorbed his words, a subtle warmth flickered within her chest. His protective instincts were unwavering, his eyes filled with genuine concern, and for a moment she felt curiosity and gratitude intertwining with a faint, unspoken attraction. This man, a stranger just hours ago, had become her shield and guide, and the thought sparked a complex, unfamiliar feeling, one that mingled trust, admiration, and the tiniest hint of intrigue. Jasmine realized that while betrayal had shattered her sense of safety, there was still hope, and perhaps, in the unlikeliest of places, the beginnings of a connection that might help her rebuild her life. By the next morning, Jasmine's fear had begun to transform into something sharper: determination. The shock of betrayal still lingered, but the panic that had once paralyzed her was now replaced with resolve. She refused to remain a victim, and she vowed that Marcus and Vanessa would never have the power to harm her again. Survival was no longer enough. She would reclaim her life and expose the deceit that had nearly destroyed her. Alexander, perceptive and pragmatic, suggested a course of action that would protect her while unearthing the truth. He recommended a highly skilled private investigator, someone discreet and meticulous, capable of gathering undeniable evidence of Marcus and Vanessa's betrayals. Within hours, Jasmine was seated in a sleek, modern office, detailing every suspicious behavior, secretive meeting, and hidden transaction she could remember. The investigator listened intently, nodding, and promised results that would arm her legally and morally. Alexander remained by her side throughout the process, offering more than practical guidance. He coordinated discreet security measures to ensure Jasmine's safety, provided insights into potential legal strategies, and offered emotional reassurance whenever the weight of reality threatened to overwhelm her. His presence was steadying, a reminder that she no longer had to navigate this dangerous world alone. As the investigation progressed, Jasmine felt an internal shift. Fear and vulnerability had been replaced by courage and empowerment. Every detail she uncovered strengthened her resolve. The woman who had once hesitated in the shadows now walked confidently in the light of her own agency. She envisioned a future where she would not only survive but triumph. Unbeknownst to Jasmine, Vanessa had begun to sense the change. Her smug confidence faltered as she observed Jasmine's emerging strength. The woman who had intended to intimidate and control now appeared untouchable, and Vanessa's jealousy morphed into something darker, a desire to strike back before Jasmine fully reclaimed her life. The stage was set for a dangerous confrontation, one in which cunning, resilience, and courage would be Jasmine's greatest allies. The gala hall shimmered under crystal chandeliers, golden light reflecting off polished marble floors. Guests in elegant gowns and tailored tuxedos mingled, sipping champagne and exchanging polite smiles. Jasmine entered with a serene composure, her emerald gown flowing gracefully, catching whispers of admiration as she moved. Alexander trailed discreetly behind, his presence commanding yet understated, offering her both protection and quiet confidence. Across the room, Marcus and Vanessa were already immersed in the crowd, unaware that Jasmine had discovered the full extent of their betrayal. Vanessa's eyes flicked toward her, sharp with curiosity and thinly veiled disdain. Marcus, distracted by Vanessa's flirtatious attention, failed to notice Jasmine's poised, unwavering gaze. Every smile he flashed toward her now seemed hollow, a reflection of the deceit she had unearthed. Jasmine navigated the social event with practiced elegance, appearing calm while carefully orchestrating subtle exposures of Marcus and Vanessa's lies. A whispered comment here, a casually mentioned observation there, each remark planted seeds of doubt among acquaintances who had once admired Marcus' charm. Alexander remained near, his quiet charisma reassuring onlookers and shielding Jasmine from any potential backlash. Together, they moved like a well-synchronized force, blending sophistication with subtle strategy. Later, Jasmine found Vanessa alone near the balcony, a smug expression still lingering. "We need to talk," Jasmine said softly but firmly. The confrontation was private, but her voice carried authority and clarity. She recounted the betrayals, the manipulation, and the cruelty, each word carefully chosen to pierce Vanessa's facade. Emotion and power intertwined in her delivery, leaving no doubt that Jasmine had reclaimed control. Vanessa's composure faltered, her carefully constructed arrogance cracking. She stepped back, stunned, as the realization sank in. Jasmine was no longer the vulnerable woman she had sought to destroy. She had evolved into someone strong, fearless, and untouchable, a force born from betrayal and tempered by courage. In that moment, the balance of power shifted irrevocably, and Jasmine's victory, though still unfolding, was unmistakable. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation as Jasmine took a seat, poised and resolute. She had prepared meticulously, supported by Alexander and the private investigator who had gathered concrete evidence of Marcus' abuse, infidelity, and Vanessa's manipulations. When her lawyer presented the case, detailing financial deceit, emotional neglect, and the shocking attempt to endanger her life, the room fell silent. Every word cut through the facade Marcus had maintained for years, exposing him for the man he truly was. Marcus sat across from her, attempting to maintain composure, but the evidence left him flustered and cornered. Vanessa's smirk, once so infuriating, had faded into unease as whispers spread throughout the courtroom. Friends, colleagues, and onlookers exchanged glances, astonished at the revelations that painted Marcus as a man consumed by selfishness and betrayal. The judge reviewed the files carefully, nodding at the thoroughness of Jasmine's documentation and the clarity of the evidence. As proceedings continued, Jasmine felt an unexpected surge of strength. She recounted details calmly when required, her voice steady and unwavering. Each fact presented, each lie exposed, reinforced her resolve. She was no longer a victim, she was a woman reclaiming her life with courage and dignity. The courtroom became a stage for her empowerment, the weight of fear and uncertainty lifting from her shoulders. When the final verdict was delivered, divorce granted, assets fairly divided, and legal protection ensured, Jasmine exhaled deeply. A wave of relief and liberation washed over her. The public exposure of Marcus' betrayal and Vanessa's manipulations validated her experiences and freed her from the emotional chains that had bound her for so long. For the first time in months, Jasmine felt truly in control, vindicated, and ready to step forward into a life defined not by others' betrayals but by her own strength, resilience, and self-worth. The days following the courtroom victory felt surreal for Jasmine. The heavy weight of fear and betrayal that had clung to her like a shadow finally began to lift, replaced by a growing sense of empowerment. She focused on rebuilding every aspect of her life, starting with her finances. No longer dependent on Marcus, Jasmine reviewed her investments, restructured her accounts, and even began exploring new business ventures she had once postponed. Each small decision she made reinforced her independence and reminded her of the strength she had discovered within herself. Alexander remained a steady presence, not as a savior but as a confidant and partner in navigating this new chapter. Their bond deepened naturally, rooted in mutual respect, shared experiences, and a quiet understanding that did not need to be spoken aloud. There were moments when his thoughtful gestures, a protective glance at a crowded event, a hand lightly brushing hers while passing documents, made her heart skip, though neither acknowledged it directly. The tension was subtle but undeniable, hinting at a connection that went beyond gratitude and friendship. Emotional growth became Jasmine's focus. She allowed herself to feel joy again, embracing the simple pleasures of life she had once taken for granted, the scent of the ocean during morning walks, laughter shared with close friends, and the quiet triumphs of professional success. Friends and family, inspired by her resilience, returned to her life, offering support and celebrating her courage. Their presence was a balm to wounds she hadn't realized were still open, and each kind gesture reinforced her sense of worth. By the time the sun set over the ocean, Jasmine stood on her balcony, looking out at the horizon with a calm determination. The life she had once thought perfect had been shattered, but from the fragments, she had built something stronger, something authentically her own. Alexander's presence nearby, quiet and unwavering, served as a comforting reminder that new beginnings could also hold the promise of connection, trust, and perhaps even love, though she was content letting it unfold naturally, on her own terms. Vanessa had not given up. From the shadows, she plotted one final attempt to undermine Jasmine, hoping to exploit any lingering vulnerability. She orchestrated a public encounter at an upscale charity event, intending to embarrass Jasmine in front of influential guests and cast doubt on her character. But Vanessa underestimated the transformation Jasmine had undergone. As the confrontation began, Alexander moved strategically, positioning himself subtly to shield Jasmine while observing Vanessa's every move. His calm, calculated presence prevented any physical or verbal attack from escalating, ensuring that Vanessa's schemes could not succeed. Guests sensed a quiet authority emanating from Alexander, leaving them unaware of the full scope of danger he had neutralized. Jasmine, composed and empowered, faced Vanessa directly. Her words were sharp, measured, and unapologetic, exposing the manipulations and deceit that Vanessa had relied upon for so long. Every syllable carried the confidence of someone who had survived betrayal and emerged stronger. Vanessa faltered, her smug demeanor crumbling under Jasmine's unwavering gaze. Humiliated and exposed, she retreated, realizing that her attempts to dominate and control had failed spectacularly. Across the room, Marcus watched helplessly, regret etched deep into his features. He had lost control of the woman he thought he could manipulate, and any influence he once held was gone forever. Jasmine's strength, courage, and resilience had rendered him powerless, leaving him to confront the consequences of his actions. In that decisive moment, Jasmine claimed full ownership of her life, unburdened by fear or betrayal, and with clarity of purpose that could never be taken away. Months had passed since that fateful night on the beach, and Jasmine had transformed her life completely. She thrived in her career, taking on new projects that challenged her creativity and leadership, earning respect from colleagues who admired both her intelligence and resilience. Financial independence had given her confidence, while the emotional wounds from betrayal had been tempered into strength. Each day was a step toward reclaiming joy, and she embraced the small victories that reminded her of how far she had come. Alexander remained a steadfast presence, not as a savior but as a partner in her journey. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they found themselves alone on a quiet stretch of the same shore where Jasmine had once been pushed into the sea. The air was warm, the waves gentle, and the moment felt suspended in time. They shared a quiet, intimate conversation, their hands brushing lightly, eyes meeting with unspoken understanding. The connection between them was subtle yet profound, a slow burning, respectful romance born out of trust, care, and shared experience. Jasmine reflected on the past, the fear, betrayal, and near loss, and acknowledged the pain that had once threatened to consume her. But now, she celebrated her growth, recognizing that every challenge had shaped her into a stronger, wiser woman. She understood that true power was not in wealth or status, but in resilience, self-love, and courage. As she stood on the shore, the moonlight casting a silver glow over the water, Jasmine breathed in the ocean air deeply, feeling completely free. Her eyes scanned the horizon, unshakable and confident, a woman reborn from adversity. The waves lapped gently at her feet, a reminder that life could be turbulent, but with strength and determination, she would always rise, unstoppable and radiant.